Hey, welcome to the YMS Podcast. We are your hosts. I am Colin Mansfield, and as always, I am joined by the illustrious Seve Carnera. You want to say hi, Seve?
Hello, everybody. Great seeing you. Thanks, Colin.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got a fun one today. A few weeks back, we were at the MODEX trade show out in Atlanta, Georgia, which we love MODEX. We love the MHI trade shows. They do MODEX out in Atlanta, and they do ProMat out in Chicago, and they alternate the years, and we go to every single one of them. It's a really great chance for the supply chain, logistics, material handling industry to really get together and hang out, have a good time, talk business, but also just get to know each other and see what's going on in the industry. So, at this specific show, we did something a little bit different. We had two booths, first off, which was really fun. This was the biggest MODEX that MHI has ever put on. And they had a whole extra wing that isn't normally used there at the convention center. And so we had the chance to go, well, look, let's spread ourselves a little bit evenly across the board. So we had a booth over in one of the wings and another booth over in a wing on the far opposite end, which was kind of a pain in the butt to set up and tear down, but we made it happen. And it was very cool because we got to meet a great cross section of people. I think several people that we may not have spoken to with just the one booth. Even cooler is that at the end of this, we went back and we looked at all the people that we scanned. It turns out we had over 400 people that came by a combination of the booths. They spoke to us. They talked about their yard management challenges. They talked about what's working, what's not working. And over the course of the show, we actually did a survey. And a subset of those 400 people filled out this survey, and we asked them, hey, what are your top yard management goals? If you're coming to our booth and you're coming to us to talk about YMS, about yard management software, chances are you're doing it for a good reason. I mean, if you're listening to the show, chances are you're listening to this for a good reason. So we wanted to share the knowledge and share some of the outputs of that survey, and we're going to put it up on the screen. So if you're watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see that as we go through this. If you're listening to the audio version of this, feel free to check out the graphics on YouTube. Spotify, we also have a video version of this show available if you want to watch it there. And what we called this is, look, industry leaders at MODEX, folks who stopped by our booth who said yard management is a critical area of concern. What are your top goals? And there were lots of options. I think we had something like 10 options that they could select from. And some of those were a little bit broad and some of those were very specific because we wanted to see, kind of where the cross sections are of people that need YMS and what they're facing in their yard that causes them to need it. So before we jump headlong into this, I just want to give a quick outline. We've got 5 of them that came up as the top 5 yard management goals. We got real-time visibility of all trailers. We've got eliminate detention fees, expedite gate processing, increase driver productivity, and access to current and historical data. And you can see the percentages on the screen here, 84% all the way down to 31% of people. So this was a multi-select. They didn't just select one. They got to select any number of these as their top goals. And then these are the percentages of what was the output of that. So Seve, before we jump in, I'd love to get kind of your sense of MODEX. You've been to a lot of trade shows, far more than I have. What was your sense of MODEX this year? What was the energy level? What were the kinds of conversations you were having? I'd love to get just an overall opinion from you on it.
No, sure, Colin. First off, I have to say it has to be the biggest show I've ever been a part of. And it speaks volumes when we can say that we had over 400 folks come to both of our booths. I can tell you that I've been a part of some larger organizations and never have I had that kind of turnout before. And we've seen it internally as well too over the last few weeks with calls and follow-ups, etc. But yeah, I mean, for the majority of the individuals that we spoke to, a lot of them had specific use cases that they really wanted to tackle. Whether it be, to your point, visibility in the yard, things like product protection were, another item that was very high on the list. And then also being able to alert individuals before activities occur in the yard. For example, the detention and demurrage fees. That was a hot topic as well too. But I gotta say, it was a great time. It was great hanging with the rest of the YMS crew, and it was never a dull moment because we were always so busy. But it was fantastic. It's probably the best show that I've ever been to. in many ways. But again, I love the fact that we had so many visitors over at our booth. 400 is an amazing number. And like I mentioned before, never before have I ever been a part of any organization that generated that much excitement and that much, people wanting to go look at our offering as well too.
Well, and you think about how, what we offer in the industry is something that demands a certain level of education, right? Before somebody acknowledges that yard management is an area of concern, unless they're coming from an organization and they already know to look out for it, a big part of what we've been doing on this show is try to educate and say, hey, this is a black hole. This is an area that is a blind spot for a lot of organizations, that if you focus in on it, there's some amazing savings to be had. And I think what we're seeing is some of the results of that education by us, perhaps by other vendors as well. But we've put a lot of emphasis and a lot of, frankly, resources into trying to educate and trying to inform folks about yard management. So it was cool to see that kind of pay off in a way at the show. We had folks, and I was talking with one of our senior sales representatives about this. We have folks who come by the booth where they've seen us at previous shows, and this is the second or third time that they've stopped by the booth, and only now has it picked up enough steam in amongst their organization and internal discussions that they're going, okay, now this is something we can actually feel like we can make a decision on. This is something that we can dedicate some resources towards. So we understand that sometimes it's a slow burn, and COVID threw a wrench in a lot of people's plans. And now I think we're starting to see, kind of, as people come back and go, okay, what are the areas that we really need to focus on? Yard management continues to come up. So let's dive into this a little bit deeper. We talked, real-time visibility of all trailers. When I say trailers, Seve, you brought up a really good point there a minute ago. There's lots of use cases, right? And even just today, we talked about a shipbuilding company. We talked about a steel manufacturer who are interested in yard management software because guess what? They got to track stuff in the yard. So when we
Yep.
say trailers, that in many cases is what they're wanting to track, but it doesn't have to be that, right? They want real-time
Right.
visibility of all the assets, anything that's on the lot. Um, I asked our team for some feedback. We've got the hard numbers. 84% of respondents to this survey said that real-time visibility of all trailers is their number one yard management goal. We cannot understate that. We cannot say that is. 84%. By far, most people, when they're thinking about a yard management software, they're thinking they want visibility. And if we kind of tease that out a little bit, probably means that they don't have great visibility right now. So I asked our team for some anecdotes. It's helpful to have those objective numbers, but it's also fun to say, well, what kinds of discussions did you have around these topics? One of our team members said, how many examples of product protection? You mentioned this, Seve. Product protection for us generally means protecting assets, but also protecting what's inside of those assets, right? Reefer
Exactly. Yep.
trailers. Think about refrigerated. We talked about this on the show in the past. You want to share a little bit, Seve, in your corner, when you were talking product protection with folks, what stood out to them about yard management and how that can help them protect what's in their yard?
Yeah, I think for the most part, the biggest things that they were really impressed with is, how we can manage not just those organizations that have dedicated assets, that we can tap into Samsara or whatever other tool that they're currently using to get those analytics from the traders themselves. And then we can consume that data on our end and present it in one interface versus having users to use, two different systems to identify what's going on with traders or reefers out in the yard. But in addition to that, our ability to also track those over the road traders as well too. So essentially, we really have two solutions. One for those dedicated traders, where we can actually grab that data from those dedicated traders and consume again in our solution. But then again, if an over the road trader comes, you don't have that data. You don't have access to that information. So how do you handle those situations? So, you know, you guys know my background. I've been very blessed. I've worked for a lot of different organizations with this stuff, and I feel very strongly we've put together a very strong product protection piece that really takes care of a lot of different use cases, not just here in the States, but also in Europe as well too. And we've developed it that way. And I think that first and foremost, it really impressed a lot of folks. But then secondly, our ability to be able to inform individuals of certain activities that could occur in the yard, whether it be detention and demurrage, a reefer unit running low on fuel, a reefer unit out of variance from a temperature standpoint. Not only can we send the emails to make them aware of that or alerts through the application, but the fact that we can also text individuals as well too was, I think, a real showstopper with a lot of individuals to state, hey, I have someone out in the yard that's responsible to make sure that these reefer units do not ever have an issue with either temperature or fuel, and you can send him a message directly to let him know that there's an issue in the yard, and absolutely is the answer to that. So, I think that without a doubt was very impressive on a lot of the folks that we spoke to, as well as, like I mentioned earlier, the ability to be able to handle so many different types of operations. If you're doing pre-cool tasks, for example, in your yards, we have that ability to do that as well too. If you're not using a pre-cool task, which I still don't understand why some organizations don't do that, but there are some out there, and I'm sure they have their reasons for not to do it. But at the end of the day, that's an option. If you don't want to do a pre-cool task, that's fine. We can eliminate that from the system. So again, I think that flexibility really stood out, and it made people really aware of what we have to offer and how we offer it from a standpoint of being able to alarm them, for lack of a better word, prior to something occurring versus having them find out at the last minute and then they're really being reactive towards the problem.
You're absolutely right, and a big piece of that is making it incredibly easy for that user to interact with the system. Right, from a user interface standpoint, I know there's nothing more frustrating than knowing what you need to do, but when you go to do it, it's a pain in the butt. And so, a big part of how our system is designed is to make that very intuitive. And I think that when the way that we have the booths set up at the trade shows really invite people to come up and look at the software and play around with it and do a drag and drop. And we've got these big kiosks for those that haven't had the chance to visit one of the shows that we attend. We have these big kiosks, giant. They're like 40-inch, 50-inch screens where you can walk right up to them, and they're at about mid-body level. You walk right up to them, and you can see us giving you a demo right there, right on the show floor. So it's a lot of fun. We try to keep it very interactive. But speaking to that user interface side, because product protection, you want to make it very clear of what's happening, right? And you spoke to alerting those users that, hey, there's a problem. Ideally, before it's actually become a problem, so that they can get ahead of it.
Exactly.
A big way that we've seen success in that area is doing that on a visual map, right? And we have Eagle View. That's what we call ours. Eagle View that shows the facility. It's like a digital twin. It shows where those trailers are. And as those assets have issues or potential problems, we'll change their colors. We'll make them flash. We'll turn them red or orange or pink or whatever you want to make that clear. One of the pieces of feedback I got from our team was the visibility of Eagle View, as well as our multi-view, which is like the grid of Eagle Views for an enterprise campus, continues to be unmatched. And I'll just share, the first trade show I ever went to was a MODEX, and it was in 2020, right before COVID happened. So this was we got the last flight, out of Atlanta, basically before they started shutting everything down. And at that time, somebody would walk up to our kiosk. I'd show them Eagle View. I'd show them how you can grab a trailer with your mouse cursor, with your finger on a touchscreen device, and drag it over, and it just blow people's minds.
Yeah.
And you would think that now, what is it, 2024, 4 years later, right? Who knows how many trade shows I've been to since then, that would be like, oh yeah, that's old news. But it continues to be one of those things that people respond to. Just being able to get the simplicity of viewing what you want to see. So that was an interesting piece of feedback I got as well. Let's talk automation. Seve, with the folks that you were talking to at the trade show, when we talk about visibility, a lot of people think that that's just you're watching it. You're just looking at, okay, cool, I see that something's happening. But when it comes to automation, I think there's an element of visibility that automation speaks to as far as actually doing things and watching as those things get done automatically. If you want to speak to that a little bit and maybe some of the feedback you got from people as you talk through the automation with them, love to hear it.
Yeah, so that definitely was a bigger piece as well too. And a lot of times when you think automation, I instantly think of manufacturing operations. They love to have that automation built in. And we saw a big influx of that through some of the connections that we got at MODEX we've had conversations over the past few weeks with. And you know what I'm talking about as well too. So it's manufacturing
Yeah.
operations that really want to automate their process so that when a product is no longer available in that trailer, that trader can be moved away with the next trader coming in with no human intervention involved and getting that raw materials back into that door so that that production line can keep on operating. It's things like that that make huge difference for those types of operations. And they need a system that's capable of doing that as well too, to be able to say, hey, that trailer's now empty. Let's get a move request in and move that trailer back out to the yard. And guess what? While we're doing that, let's go look for that next trailer with that raw material and place it in that dock door. Simple things like that can make a world of difference for a lot of operations. And I was so happy to be able to stand there and be able to share that with some of these opportunities. And sure enough, they've turned out to be leads, so that's even better. So um, to your point, though, I think the way that we present our product at these trade shows is bar none best I've seen of any competitor out there. I love the fact how we have those big screen TVs. I think we had four, six. There was four in our booth, and there was two at the other one. And you're right, people will just walk up to them
Mhm.
and start playing with it and really get a good feel for how the system works. And then to your point as well too
Mhm.
earlier, it's fun to watch people walk by that have no interest in YMS. They're not even in the YMS
Mhm.
space, but they're there at the conference and they're so interested in what we have to offer because the booth again attracts so much attention due to the big kiosk that we have there. And again, that eagle view is just such a beautiful sight to see when it's all lit up and you've got all these traders out there and you can do the drag and drop. You can call live drivers to dock doors, things of that nature. So, yeah, without a doubt, that does stand out from a standpoint of us and even some of our competitors as well, but even just from a standpoint of having a booth there, because there's so many there that spend so much money on those booths.
Mhm.
But we've done a great job of setting up those booths to portray what we have to offer, and that definitely makes a big difference.
Well, it's enormous. I was looking at our plan for the booth, and we had these four light pillars on the outside, a big light box in the middle, and then our kiosks around it. And I was like, wow, we're gonna really like be. And then we're next to these two booths that are like twice as tall as us, and they've got big like spotlights pointed up and all this stuff. And you go, wow. People put some serious resources and planning, as did we, into these shows, and it was phenomenal to see that our focus on really the software being the centerpiece and driving people really resonates. People come up, they want to play with it.
Sure.
Um, I had a guy. This was kind of interesting. I had a two or three people from a one company who came up, and they were asking me, about the system, and I was showing them some stuff, and they start going, it'd be cool. I wonder if maybe in the future you guys could make it so that we could actually see what's inside of the trailer, not just where the trailer is, but actually the parts that are inside of it. And I was like, funny you should mention that. And I hovered over one of our trailers that shows you what we call the X-ray vision functionality, and it shows what's inside of that trailer right there on the hover. And it just blew their minds. And they go, we were literally talking about this last night in our hotel room, going, it'd be great if one day somebody did this. And we're here, and I'm like, yeah, let's get you signed up for a demo. Let's do it. So it's kind of fun to see that level of excitement right there when you're talking with somebody. Nothing beats that face to face.
No, sure, without a
Um,
doubt.
I, I was talking with our CTO. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, I don't mean to
No, I
cut
was
you
just
off.
going
Go
to say,
ahead.
without a doubt, you're absolutely right, Colin. It was nice to be able to have those conversations with individuals that didn't realize some systems out there have those types of capabilities already. So, yeah, I will share with you whenever I do a demo and I show that differences between showing a commodity type on a trailer, which, is basically rolled up information of a type of product on a trailer versus showing SKU level information, and I can go to the map and search for that SKU and light up the map with whichever trader has that product into it. Yeah, it impresses a lot of folks.
Yeah, no, it is, and again, a lot of our stuff, all of our new innovations, in fact, are customer driven. So this isn't stuff that we just built in
Yeah,
a vacuum in a garage somewhere because we wanted to. This was, really customers coming to us going, hey, it'd be great if our WMS could feed you what's going inside of that trailer. We went,
Yeah.
great, let's do an integration. And that's what spawned that functionality that we get to show off to people. I was talking with our CTO, Margaret, and she was there on the show floor with us. She was alternating, kind of walking between the booths and doing demos with people. And as I like to say, shaking hands and kissing babies and do all that
Yep.
good stuff.
Yep.
And I was talking with her, and one of the things that really popped out to us, just anecdotally as we were talking with people, is there seemed to be more of an emphasis on dock management. And specifically, we have a feature that we're coming out with called Magic Dock. It's one of our new innovations this year that we've done some press releases on, that we did a video about as well. Again, customer-driven functionality. And this Magic Dock feature is, we've called it the trailer spot plan or the dock door planner in the past as well. It basically allows, especially those companies, really resonates with like 3PLs, folks who are planning customers to go to specific dock doors and then want to see a rotation. And it basically gives you an order of what trailers need to go to what dock, so that can then drive automation, for example. We're doing things with assigning trailers to dock doors based on customer rules or based on customer criteria fed to us via integration. Right. So it was interesting to be talking with folks, show them the Eagle View, show them our appointment schedule. And then they go, it'd be great if we could just one more step, if we could have that to a dock door. And then I pull up the Magic Dock, and it would, again, just, wow, that's amazing. So, a lot of interest, I think, not just in yard management this year, not just in visibility, but walking the dog a step further. How can we okay, yard management is great. What about product protection? Okay, Eagle View is great. What about X-ray vision? Appointments are great. What about dock scheduling? There's that extra layer of going a little bit deeper now as people have learned more about yard management that I think really stuck out at this show.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Let's talk about the next one. You're going to like this one, Seve. You're going to like this one. Number 2 on the list here, 54%. So half, a little bit over half of respondents said that eliminating detention fees was one of their top goals for when it comes to yard management. I'm going to stop talking. I want you to talk a little bit about what your experience has been with detention fees and how you've seen yard management conquer those.
Yeah, Colin. I mean, many times when we start going through our discovery process during the sales process, one of those first questions that we ask is, how much are you spending on detention and demurrage? And typically I get an answer back, and typically my responses to that is, you know what, you can pay for your solution based off of that and still keep more money in hand. So it's amazing how many organizations go through that process and they cannot automate the process of understanding, hey, for example, I get 10 hours worth of time with that trailer. I'm up at 8 hours and that trailer's still sitting here, and I have no clue how much time I have left on that trailer. And that's just one trailer. You multiply that by 100, by 200, 300, that money starts to add up. And the way our system works, and it automates that entire process, again, we will help you manage those detention and demurrage fees where, at the very least, you can make a decision and state, you know what, I've got an hour left with that trailer. I know I'm going to need it on an outbound load eventually here today. I'll pay the fees. I'll keep it in-house. But you know what? These other 20 that we have out here, let's go ahead and get them out of the yard. So it's those types of things that help them make smarter business decisions based on data, based on alerts, based on visibility on a map, based on so many ways that we can offer that information to individuals to make them aware of those situations in the yard, that they have the ability to then make those smart business decisions on data versus just on what they're observing out in the yard.
Absolutely. No, it's a great point. And what's interesting to me is that sometimes when I'll talk to, and this was the same at the show, there can be a level of almost embarrassment when you bring up detention sometimes, of like, well, I know we're paying too much, or, it's not ideal, or whatever the case is. And what I always say is like, look, there's nothing to be embarrassed about. We're solving problems here. That's what we're in the business of doing. It's in our company name, Yard Management Solutions. We want to solve this for you. So 54% of people, what that tells me is that even if you don't know, and if you're listening to this and you know that you're paying detention and you don't know how much, or you're unsure of how much, chances are it's too much, right?
Yeah.
And that's the reality of what we see with this driver detention, especially demurrage as well. Is often there is a 90 to 95% we found is preventable, and things like simple, turning a trailer red or putting a red stripe on it in advance to let you know, hey, this is becoming a problem or this is now a problem, really scratches that itch. I always joke, it's not black magic. We're not throwing. This isn't some crazy sensor you got to buy that's going to magically tell you. What we're doing is we're showing you where your problem areas are, and allowing you to make that decision, as you said, Seve, to your point.
Yep.
We've talked about this on the show before, but I'll mention it again because Michelin stopped by our booth. One of our customers, Michelin, we're actually have a case study that we're going to be going live with here very shortly. They've saved $2.5 million at one site in detention fees. That was alone, just detention, $2.5 million saved. A second site, $450,000 saved in detention fees. Both of those in less than a year. Am I saying every organization has, $500,000, $1 million in detention? No, I'm not. But what I am saying is that this is very easy to get rid of with the right solution. And what 54% of people are saying is that they're coming to our booth because they want this to be eliminated or reduced significantly.
Right.
So cannot overstate this as well. Education. I asked our team when it comes to eliminating detention fees. One of the anecdotes that our team members threw my way was, educating why an organization needs a YMS that is purpose built for the yard from yard experts. Otherwise, they're going to continue to lose time, trailers, and money, as we see with detention. And I couldn't agree more, right? A lot of times when folks will come to us, they're comparing us against something, right? When they're coming to the booth and they're interested in a YMS, they're either comparing us against their current manual processes, they're comparing us against their WMS provider's bolt-on solution, or against, if they're really doing their research, another yard management system. And I encourage that. I say, good, do your research. Absolutely. Without a doubt. Ask for referrals, ask for customer references, right?
Mhm.
And what this speaks to me of, and what I would echo just in my discussions, is a purpose-built YMS, a dedicated solution, will always come out on top. When you're comparing head-to-head, and we continue to see that. Folks coming to us. In fact, Seve, do you have any stories to share about people coming to you talking about, hey, we're with our current solution isn't working out the way we wanted it to? I know there were a couple times where people were mentioning that. Anything you want to share?
Yeah. It just it never ceases to amaze me how some organizations, to your point, spend so much time trying to find a solution, a best in breed, let's say, and they end up being disappointed at the end. And, I can only imagine what kind of buyer's remorse you would have at that point after spending so much time and effort to get a solution in house, and then it doesn't turn out to be exactly what you expected. Yeah, I did have a few conversations along those lines as well. And it's interesting for me as well too to have those conversations because many times I know that other organization, I know individuals at that organization. A lot of them are still good friends, but unfortunately, whether it had been through the implementation process without getting the right requirements gathered, I don't know what it is sometimes about those types of situations. But it does sadden me to hear that, hey, I talked to one individual who said that they lost a trailer full of product inside of it on a reefer. And their current YMS solution did not bring that to light. And that it bothers me only because it sort of gives a black eye to the whole industry versus just a certain product.
Yeah.
And I don't know all the particulars behind it or the processes behind what was going on there, but ultimately, at the end of the day, they lost a trailer worth of product, and that, if anything, it does encourage me that there's opportunities out there, but I hate to hear those stories as well too. I never want to hear
Yeah.
some customer coming to me and telling me, you know what, we lost a trailer load of product. We're trying to come up with a way to resolve this. And the first question you ask them, so what are you currently doing? Well, we're using X. It's like, whoa, okay, maybe a bit of a surprise there, but okay, I understand that. But at the end of the day, I feel very comfortable that if you go through that process, I don't care who it is, you should be able to eliminate those situations in the yard. And, whether it be a sophisticated solution with IoT devices or one without, Both solutions should have a solution for those types of situations and be able to eliminate those types of issues in the yard where you're losing a trailer full of product. But to your point, Colin, it is
Hmm.
interesting to have those conversations, and then have people try and have you compare apples and oranges sometimes, or sometimes it's a little bit closer to apples and apples. But at the end of the day, I love having the conversations. I love having those discussions, and we love solving problems. So it's one of those crazy situations, especially for me personally, having been exposed to so many other systems as well too. So it's fun, but again, I'd never like to hear about those situations occurring to a potential opportunity.
Well, you got to have a high level of empathy,
Yeah,
because realistically, changing anything. I mean, I've changed software providers internally in our company, for management things and whatever, and it's
sure.
never a walk in the park, right? And so there's a high level of empathy that has to go along with, how can we assist you? I'm bummed that that happened. How can we assist you? What can we do to help your operation out? And I think at the end of the day, any software company at all worth their salt, that's their goal, right?
Sure.
Um, so on the detention fees side, I mean, again, one of those things that continues to plague the industry, right? Continues to pop its head up. And I was on Freight Waves, What the Truck, talking about this as well. How it's fascinating to me that operations will, spend resources, they'll spend dedicated time, they'll even have dedicated people around doing yard checks and finding trailers out in the yard, and yet detention fees still continue to be a problem. And so, this obviously, there's some work to do here, and that makes me very excited to work with some of these organizations and help them out. Um, we had another one that was interesting here. 37%. So we're working our way down. We got 84% real time visibility, 54% detention, eliminating detention fees, 37%. So creeping up towards that half, but not quite, was expediting gate processing, which I thought was
Yeah.
really interesting. And you and I, Seve, having implemented enough of these solutions to know what a critical area the gate is. What's interesting to me is that that's not always what people think of when they think of yard management. They don't always think of, oh, we need our gate to be faster. Inevitably, that comes up, right? During implementation, quickly you find that out. But it's interesting to me that this is becoming more of a focus area for folks that are looking at a yard management. They go, oh, yeah, the gate is a part of that. Um, One of our team members mentioned our automatic gate solution. We'll talk about that in a minute. But just purely talking about gate processing, why do you think this is such a critical area when it comes to managing the yard, Seve?
Yeah, I mean, the operations start there. I mean, without good
Yeah.
gate personnel that are making sure that they understand what's coming in and what's leaving the facility, it's going to screw up a lot of the process internally inside the yard. So you have to make sure that that process is solid. But to your point, that process needs to be solid, but not take 20 minutes to check in a trailer. So, things
Right.
that we do on our end, for example, the use of tablets to do arrivals and departures. Someone's not tied to the gate to do that entry about that particular unit. We can take advantages of cameras as well too, another automation process that we do as well too with one of our partners, so that we can see what traders are coming in. If it's a container, for example, we can see exactly what SCAC and container number that is, and it's easily used to be able to input into our solution to again speed up that process, number one, but secondly get the data accurate as well too, which is critical as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right, Colin. Every goal I've ever been a part of, even if that process is not happening at a gate, if it's happening at a shipping and receiving office, that process number one has to be quick, and secondly, it has to be extremely accurate as well too. The last thing you want is for someone to fat finger a number on an entry for a trailer number, and then you can't find that trailer in the yard because it doesn't exist. So things like that we can do to automate that process, to make it more efficient, to make it quicker to arrive trailers without the use of IoT devices and things of that nature. Again, just shows how mature this solution has become, number one. And secondly, how some other IoT devices to this point, and we've had this discussion before, are really outdated. Um, and they're not really giving you the bang for your buck that you're expecting. So, you know, again, you know, trying to make gate operations quicker and easier is critical for every operation. And you've heard me say this before. When it comes to arrivals at a gate, I don't want a gate personnel to see 20 fields that they need to input on there in order to arrive that unit. You need to make it simple, concise, accurate data, get them in the yard, and then move on to the next trailer and repeat that process. And once you can do that, right there in and of itself, that will improve so much of what activities are occurring in the yard just based on what's going on at the gate. And that's not just for arrivals either. You got to make sure you understand what's going out of that yard as well too.
Yeah, and you bring up a great point. The on the IoT side, and we did a whole discussion on this on another episode. So if you're interested in Seve's hot takes about IoT and specifically RFID in the yard, go check out our earlier episode about that. But I do want to mention something. You and I were talking about this earlier, which is, 4 or 5 years ago, when I first came into the company and was going to some of the early trade shows that I attended, specifically MODEX, but also ProMat and a few of the other ones, something that came up a lot was how do you know? Okay, trailer's on the lot, it's right there, but how do you know? How does the system actually know that, right? And how can I trust that the digital twin is accurate? What's interesting is that has shifted, I think. And I don't know if it's just the market shifting and so people are more aware, or if it's the education, probably some combination of all those. But what's interesting is that I'm not getting that question nearly as often. And often that question is born out of a sincere desire to understand how does the solution work. But also it can be born out of a bit of apprehension, like manual stuff doesn't work. When people are involved, things go wrong. And what's interesting to me about that mindset is it sort of speaks to what we've seen in robotics as well inside of the warehouse. There's huge opportunities for automating manual tasks, right? And things that happen the same way every time. And if we can get a robot to do that thing, or a system, if it's inside of a software solution, a system to automate that process, wonderful. But what we see now is a lot of people are getting more granular. A lot of folks, I think, have understand now that you just can't throw a sensor or a robot or a piece of technology at something and that's going to be the end all be all fix.
Yeah.
And probably that's a lesson that has been learned after spending millions of dollars, right? That's not something that has come cheap, but is nevertheless, I think, a real understanding that is in the industry now. These days, what I found, and specifically at MODEX here just a few weeks ago, was when I would bring up that, hey, our system is a process-driven system. We don't rely on sensors primarily, though we can integrate with them. But our customers generally want to know what's in the yard, where is it, be able to do an easy yard check, be able to communicate with their jockey dryers simply and effectively without having to pay the upfront cost or the ongoing maintenance of sensors in the yard. They go, okay, yeah, great, I got it. And it was this understanding that clicked in. And that was new, I think, this year compared to what I've seen in previous years. And honestly, a welcome iteration on that discussion. Again, not to say that sensors don't have their place. They do. Shoot, we've integrated with GPS sensors. We'll continue to do so. I think GPS as well as even RFID at the gate for check-in and checkout. We've talked about this. There are great use cases, but you can't just throw a puck at something and expect it to tell you what's wrong with it, right? So an interesting side there. Let's talk about automatic gate here for a minute. We talked about expediting gate processing, and Seve, what you said, I think, eliminating or limiting the number of fields that are shown to a user, an actual person that's there at the guard shack or at the shipping receiving office to check in, check out, is crucial. But what about removing that person altogether? From what you saw at the trade show and talking to folks, would you say that the automatic gate, putting a kiosk, putting a touchscreen device, or to your point earlier, cameras, is that something that you would say there's a higher level of interest in now?
Without a doubt, Colin. And I've seen that interest raised or activities increase with those types of solutions since the COVID days. Obviously, that brought in a whole new ball game, a whole new ball of wax from a standpoint of changing processes due to that pandemic. But at the end of the day, that has continued to grow over the past few years because I think consumers are getting much smarter about the fact that, hey, options like that are available. And guess what? They can also automatically open and shut gates, verify that that load should actually be at that site, verify that that load leaving that facility should actually leave that site with that attached driver. And those things are super important to a lot of organizations, especially when they're trying to save cost from the manpower needed at a gate sometimes. Uh, but without a doubt, I have seen a huge influx of interest in those automated gates. And the thing that I find super exciting about that as well too is that the solutions for that has probably increased twice, double of what I've seen over in the past few years. They're still expensive pieces of hardware, but at the end of the day, to get them automated, to get them to be communicated with external systems, to allow you to confirm that that's an actual appointment in the system to allow entry into the facility as well as out of the facility is invaluable to a lot of organizations. And quite honestly, I think a lot of drivers actually prefer that than dealing with an individual as well. They don't have to scream over a running truck that say, hey, this is my appointment number. I misheard that number. They don't need to worry about any of that. They can walk up, or they don't even have to walk up to the kiosk. Some of our solutions include them right there at the level of the driver. And when they can enter that information and quickly gain access into the facility, again, I think that's another area where a lot of companies are being very smart about looking at those types of opportunities because it goes back to what we said earlier. It makes the data clean. You know exactly what's coming in and what's leaving. And then on top of that, you're saving so much with the ability to have those types of solutions in place versus having an individual do that process for you. We're all human. Humans makes mistakes. We can make mistakes in the way we can program a solution. Those can be rectified. But at the end of the day, the to your point earlier that I mentioned, keep it simple at the gate. Don't have someone enter 20 fields worth of information. You don't need that first and foremost. But when you get the data that you do need and you can expedite that process even further with the use of kiosk, it makes some individuals, some organizations extremely happy with the ability to do that. And that includes operations that, are your normal DCs, normal warehouses, but then you do have some other operations too where security is at the, utmost. And, you don't want to have extra individuals running around your yard. And when you can introduce these kiosks that allow you to control that flow of the entries and exits, it helps them tremendously as well. So without a doubt, Colin, I over the past few years I have seen it started like I mentioned with COVID, but it's grown even further here over the past few years.
Yeah, there's an interesting discussion that I've heard now a couple times from both customers as well as from potential customers, leads or others at the shows, and I think this bore out in MODEX as well, which is like, is a YMS does that include the automatic gate piece? Because you can really think of the entire sort of life cycle of a trailer, but also the life cycle of assets within that trailer, or of the including the WMS side. Some folks really want an all-in-one, and they just want to buy. They want to go to one company and buy it all. And as we've talked about in the past, generally that means you'll get better solutions in some areas than in others because that company
Right.
only has limited resources and they're going to focus on their money makers, right? And so there's an element of okay, well then let's go to the best providers for the different areas of our operation, for a WMS, for a TMS, for a YMS, for an ERP solution. We do this with HR software. We do it with everything, right? So what I'm finding is that there is a conversation happening, and I don't know that this is one that will ever be resolved necessarily because it's kind of up to opinion, but is a YMS provider, should you go to them to manage the gate, or is there an opportunity for a gate management system or a entry management system, entry exit? Is there an opportunity for there to be a standalone offering in that area? And our answer to date has always been yes. right, for both. We provide an automatic gate solution that is built into our software and works on a kiosk. We have partners that we've worked with on the camera side of life to be able to, whether it's license plate or whether it's imaging on the side of a container to automatically check in and check out assets. And we've even done work with other, for like I mentioned earlier, owned asset stuff for GPS, on trailers as well. So there's opportunities all across the board. And I think if anybody is wondering, and if you're asking that question, do we just look for it all, or do we look for a gate piece and a YMS piece? I would say, look at what your criteria are. What are the things that are your showstoppers? Where are the things that are costing you the most money? If you're like many of the folks that filled out this survey, chances are visibility and detention fees probably are a little bit higher up on the totem pole of the list. Maybe you look at a YMS first and then see what kind of gate operation or gate management they have. For us, we've got it built in, but we've also had customers decide to go another route, and that's okay. That's up to, of course, your own decision-making criteria and what is going to be the best for your company. We're always happy to integrate. We talk about this a lot. If you can't integrate in this industry, you're dead. So I think when it comes to the automatic gate system, that's something that we've prioritized. Is if a customer decides to go another direction, well, we have an integration there to service them as well. Okay, we've got a couple more here, and I know we're at the tail end of our episode. The last two are increased driver productivity at 32%, and then close behind it, access to current and historical data, which is at 31%. So of the hundreds of people that filled out this survey that came by our booth that said yard management is important, around 30% said that driver productivity, and when we say driver, we're talking yard drivers, jockeys, hostlers, switchers, yard dogs, whatever you want to call them, and then access to current and historical data. I want to talk about the data, and then I'm going to open it up to you, Seve, to talk through the yard driver piece.
Sure.
And what I'll really mention on the data, and this is what I tell all of our leads that come our way, any folks that I speak with that are interested in a YMS of any kind, is, look, folks generally come to us for the visibility, right? And that bears out in the numbers. 84% say real-time visibility. Generally that's going to be a combination of our modules, but Eagle View and Multi-View, getting that map is critical. And that's a huge reason why they come to us. They need that. What I always joke is that, well, they stay with us for the data, right? Because when it comes down to it, once you have that visibility, now you need to know what tweaks do I need to make to our operational flow, to our workflows, to our, how our employees check in and out trailers. You made a point a few weeks back, Seve, that's really stuck with me. And that is that, and tying this back to the gate piece, when it comes to the gate, you're not just concerned with how many trailers are we getting on in any given hour, for example, how many assets are coming onto our yard. What you're really concerned with is how long does it take to check in any given asset. Right. And that speaks to the fields you mentioned earlier and of course the automatic gate. But when it really comes down to it, that level of visibility, how long is it taking? And at the dock, same thing, not just how long does it sit at the dock, but how long does it take to load or unload at a dock. Right. Yeah. And this is the level of visibility that reporting will get you. So you get the immediate visibility of Eagle View, but then how are you going to know what decisions you need to make down the road to become even more productive, to eliminate additional friction points in your yard? Well, you need reports. And so 31% have identified that is an area that they know they need. I would say that I bet if you were to interview any of our customers, maybe we should do this on a survey. Maybe we should do a survey asking them. But I would hazard a guess that, 6 months to a year later, that 84% may be on the other side of the graph because now reporting has become that much more of an emphasis. All right, off my soapbox. Talk to me about increased driver productivity, Seve. What did you hear at the show about people talking about their yard drivers?
Yeah, and that's another great feature as well too that we have with our booth as well too. We discussed the big screen TVs, the monitors that we have there that you can see the application, you can see the Eagle View, you can see the multi maps as well too, where you see separate operations in one view. But on top of that, we also place one of these little lovely devices right above that screen, and it shows the driver application. So when someone makes a move through the application, and exactly, yeah, you've got one too. When you make a move through the application, that move request appears on the tablet there in front of them, sitting right above the screen. So they're amazed, number one, because when you explain to them, you're going to place one of these little tablets inside of the yard driver's truck. That is going to be the means of communication. That is going to be the way that they're going to understand what their workflows are. There will be no miscommunication over radio, let's say, over what that trailer number or scat code was. There will be no Easter egg hunt, and it's kind of appropriate this past week was Easter, but there is no Easter egg hunt occurring in the yard looking for that particular unit because the driver knows exactly where he's picking that unit up and exactly where he's dropping it off. And then we walk that driver through the steps of completing that move. I've shared this before many times with callers on demos, etc. You know, a big concern sometimes is that yard drivers are going to be resistant to the change in systems or their process. But I will tell you, I have never seen a user group that has embraced our solutions so quickly as yard drivers because it makes their job that much easier. And in addition to that, obviously we have the intelligence enough within our solution as well to be able to identify what that next best move for that driver should be. So obviously we're trying to eliminate those drivers that are picking up a trailer and dropping it off on the east side of the building and then picking the next move over on the west side of the building when there could be a move right next to them that they could complete. So when potential opportunities understand this and they've been educated on this and they see how it works, it really opens up some eyes. So similar to your comment about reports, I think that would also jump up the scale as far as importance of the solution because it makes those drivers so much more efficient. You're saving time you're also saving cost on fuel. And, one of the byproducts of that too is less CO2 emissions as well too. Now, I will share with you when I first started out in this industry, the fact that we could do that and send those yard moves to those drivers just blew my mind. And I was thinking, man, this is just fantastic because it's going to make those drivers that much efficient, that much easier to do the workflows. To your point as well, too, in the reports, we know how long it took that driver sat there idle, how long did it take them to accept the move, how long did it take them to complete it. If there was any issues with the move, for example, they couldn't drop it in the location due to the fact that there was snow in that location or the trailer had frozen brakes, whatever the case may be. To your point, now we have all that data surrounding all those movements in the yard. And now, again, companies can make smart business decisions based on data versus what they're observing. And I know I've said that statement before already, but it's the actual truth. I think that is one area where we may not spend enough time when we do demos, when we educate customers on the importance of that, because that is extremely important. And to your point as well, too, on the reports, I can't say enough about your comment that you're absolutely right. I think organizations that are customers now would probably put those two or subjects further up on the list than we saw from individuals that may not have a solution currently. Because again, I don't think we do a great job. I know I don't do a great job during demos explaining data and reports. We cover it, but the importance of it and how it will affect operations moving forward are things that really I don't think people understand or don't comprehend until they have the solution in place.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things that's challenging. I think you do a great job of it. It's just challenging
Thank
to for that opportunity to really contextualize that until they realize, oh, this means I know how many moves John is doing. This means that when Jerry goes and has his lunch break, that everyone's aware, so we're not assigning moves to him or we're not trying to find him on
exactly.
the radio, right?
Yeah.
And suddenly when it's contextualized within their operation and they see the real names and the real oh, I get it. But you're right, on a demo and even at the show it can be a little bit, reports, you pull them up there, it's not the gee whiz wow of all the cool trailers on the screen. It's numbers, but at the
Just
end of
basic.
the day those numbers end up saving operations hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Oh yeah.
So I agree with you fully there. So as a recap, let's roll this up and recap it here. These 5 areas, I think that this is a great snapshot into kind of where the industry is right now as it pertains to yard management. Um, I would absolutely, echo the statements I said earlier, just to reiterate those, that this seems to be an area that is, there's a higher level of education, higher level of awareness, higher level of discussion. We're not just talking about, oh, we need visibility, but where in the yard do you need visibility? And that's phenomenal because it gives us this huge opportunity to show off some of the cool stuff we've built. But it's also great because it brings to mind things like detention, right? So we got 84% visibility, real-time visibility, 54% eliminate detention fees. And then the other ones, 37% gate, 32% driver productivity, 31% access to historical data. I think you're right. Probably all of those are going to be in different places when you come back and talk to an operation later, but
Yeah.
all 5 of those end up being very critical. I'm interested to see the next time we do this next year. I'm sure we'll do it again at ProMat. We've got a few other trade shows up our sleeves here coming up. It'll be fun to see how this discussion evolves. You mentioned CO2 emissions. We were in Germany at LogiMat last year, and I was blown away at the level of discussion happening around CO2 emissions. I'm not sure that in the US here, we're at that same kind of, I don't know if it's the same level or if our focus is in a different area, but I haven't seen that quite as much, but I'm interested to see if that rises as well. To your point earlier, it can be a byproduct of things like reducing the friction and increasing productivity for jockey moves. Michelin, we're doing a case study on, I mentioned earlier, they saw 50% reduction in jockey travel distance. They didn't buy our software because of that. They bought it for the detention and for many other things, but then they came back and gave us these numbers, which is pretty phenomenal. So it'll be interesting to see if that rises up as a more crucial area. And to see if, the discussion around sensors changes as well. There's always new things coming out. You and I have kept a close eye on GPS sensors and how those have evolved over time and got you and I have rate to actually pretty accurate. So it'll be interesting to see how do these discussions evolve. Seve, any recaps you want to give or any hot takes here at the end that you want to throw our way about MODEX and the discussions you had there?
No, just again, Colin, it was a great time. It was a great time spending time with the team as well. But you know what? It was also great seeing a lot of old friends that I hadn't seen in a while too. I saw some friends that are not even in the yard business, but I've made connections through so many other folks, whether it be dock levelers, because I have a background in that as well too, and individuals that I haven't seen in a year or so. That was great to see as well too. So, those are some of the things I look forward to every time I go every year. I make it a habit to go look for individuals, and they come make it a habit to come look for me as well too, which is great. But it's great to have that camaraderie and that friendship and bond between individuals that you may not be working together anymore, but you still are good friends, and you enjoy still seeing each other and having discussions and catching up on the kids and stuff. So I really enjoyed the week, and again, credit to you guys as well too. The YMS team does a great job in setting these things up. I was just there for the tag along, or realistically on this one, but I loved every moment of it. It was great.
It was a lot of fun. What I'll say is if you're listening to this or watching this and you haven't gone to a logistics trade show and you're in the industry, it does not sound like on paper the most exciting time. Let's go talk about yards. Let's go talk about warehouses. Let's go talk about freight. But I will share with you, having gone to enough of these, it is a blast. The MODEX and ProMat shows are really low barrier to entry. You can attend for free. There's not a cost to attend the MODEX and ProMat trade shows. Next year, we're going to be in Chicago for ProMat in the spring. So if you want to stop by and say hi, free, just buy a ticket to Chicago, come hang out with us. We always have great swag at the booth. This year we had Yeti mugs. We had hats that say our catchphrase, "Stop the Insanity," on them. People were loving those. And we had, what else do we have? Stress balls. Yeah, there we go. There's the Yeti. Yeah,
Yep.
stress balls. So we always have make it a good time. We'd love to hang out with you, grab a coffee, grab a beer, and just talk shop, but also just get to know you. So please feel free, stop by any of our booths. We've got a couple other shows coming up. I know we're going to be at Pack Expo show here in the fall. I think we've got another one in the meantime. So keep a look on our socials. Keep an eye on our socials. We'll have, of course, what booth we're at and all that good stuff coming up to those shows. We'd love to see you. For now, we'll sign off on MODEX 2024. Excited for whatever's next. And we'll be back here in a couple more weeks with another YMS Podcast episode. Thanks for listening and or watching. We'll see you next time.